has 1 in the numerator is also known as a
Digital Learning Day is a global day where we enhance education in terms of using digital devices in the classrooms throughout all grade levels, K through 12. Today we have a good partnership through a lot of our departments, Career and Tech Ed, Learning Technologies and Technology Services and Innovation, Volusia Virtual, Title I, VIMS, and Digital Assessment and Instruction.
So I'm going to partition this line into 4s. So I have to pick a color. So I have to make it equals. So 1, 2, 3, 4.
Volusia County is pretty much known for leading the edge, if not being a part of the discussion as we looked at each district. And so staying on the cusp and moving forward with every grade level being a part of it is amazing to see. And what I think is the most beneficial is seeing every grade level. Kindergartners are using technology to enhance their instruction. All the way up to the 12th graders in our district. They're all using sometimes the same resources, but in different ways, and that's important for personalized learning.
Okay, and what happened to the marble?
It slowed down because
Okay, but what caused it to slow down? Was it inertia that caused it to slow down? Friction caused it to slow down. So that was your other piece, right?
Then nightly sings the staring owl, to-oo, to-wit, to-oo.
Robin Dietrichs is the most amazing, steadfast teacher that I've ever met. My child was in her class, and I think seeing her work with students has been absolutely inspirational to me. Everything she does, she layers and takes the best of in her room. If it works one year, she does it. If it doesn't, she changes it up and is constantly looking to improve for the particular kids that she has.
All right, now it's your job to score me. Look at your partner. My students really have large academic needs, and I know that they need me to push them, to have rigorous expectations for them, because I know that it can change their whole life.
she cares about how students, how they succeed in their work, and she cares about whether we...
My daughter's in middle school, and she refers back to when I was in 4th grade, 3 years ago, I learned something from Ms. Dietrichs, and it's helping me today. And that's the kind of teaching that we all, as professionals, hope that in the future, our kids are going to remember us as they go on.
So read that sentence.
The world is
Please join me in congratulating Robin Dietrichs. Come on up, Robin! Where is she? There she comes.
Wow, I did not expect for this to happen. I would like to thank you, Superintendent Russell, school board members, Nancy Waite, Cynthia Ramirez, and the Futures Foundation for this great outreach.
Good afternoon. We'll call the March 15th workshop to order. It is now 4:05. Can we please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? Thank you, and welcome to today's presentation on VPK. Mr. Superintendent.
Thank you, Madam Chair. At this time, I would like to call up Teresa Marks.
Good afternoon, Chairman Wright, school board members, Superintendent Russell. It is my privilege to be sharing with you some information about the education of our very youngest students here in Volusia County Schools, and that would be our voluntary pre-kindergarten students. We have voices from the field. I'll be introducing you to many who have some thoughts and things to share. The information that was sent to you over the weekend, the 3 articles, were sent to us by DJ Lebo, and they support her portion of the presentation, and I found them to be very interesting, and I hope you did too. So I'm going to stop. I'm going to call forward and introduce, please, DJ Lebo, the Executive Director of the Early Learning Coalition for Flagler and Volusia Counties. Did I get that right? Wonderful. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Thank you for taking time to talk with us today. I wanted to tell you a little bit about who the Early Learning Coalition is, first of all. So the Early Learning Coalition is a statutorily created recipient. There are 30 coalitions within the state of Florida, and we are the single grantor for school readiness dollars and VPK, or voluntary pre-kindergarten dollars, in the counties for Flagler and Volusia. And we have been enacted by statute since 1999. Every year we serve an estimated 5,000 children in school readiness and about 4,500 in voluntary pre-kindergarten. So we're the ones who are as I've heard said, the gatekeeper, the sole source of funding. Providers have to contract with us in order to offer those services, in order to enroll those children, and in order for us to pay them for the curriculum and for the delivery of those services. We have about 250 providers in both Flagler and Volusia combined. So one of the things I want to talk about is why fund early learning? Why is that important? And I think looking at the variety of backgrounds we have in the members here, lots of you know for lots of different reasons why early learning is critical. One of the first things I want to start with is really talking about human brain development and the amount of brain development that happens before they ever enter the kindergarten age group. And it really is significant. You see over 700 neurons or neural connections are made every single second between the time a child is born and the time a child is about 3 to 3.5 years old. One of the best indicators of those neural connectors being actually made is through a serve and return concept, interactions with other human beings. So to me, it's very critical that we do everything we can, especially for those children that would not have typically the best environment to be able to grow and their brains to be able to grow at such a young age. So we have a little bit of a graphic for you that just kind of shows what is happening. So it starts out with those pathways, then it goes to language, and then it moves on to those higher cognitive functions, which is where I think about the public school system taking over and moving into helping our children be successful throughout life. The next thing we want to talk a little bit about is the word gap. You might have heard it's kind of it's a buzz that's out there a lot about interactions that children have at a young age and how that can help be the foundation for them long term. And so one of them is really talking about the difference in the amount of words children hear before they get to kindergarten. And it's significant. Children that are in families that are low income hear on average about 600 words an hour. Children that are from a middle class income hear about 1,200 words an hour. Children that come from professional parents hear over 2,100 words an hour. So you take those discrepancies and those gaps and you multiply it by the number of hours and the number of days and the number of weeks that a child is living in that poverty situation or even living in that middle income situation, and that grows to 30 million words difference between what a child that's living in poverty hears and a child from a professional family hears before they ever enter kindergarten. And then one of the other things I think is important is talking about that then correlates to the number of words that child is speaking, right? So it correlates directly to, on average, you might have an 18-month-old that has 1,000 words in their vocabulary. But if they're from a low-income family, they're going to have less than 250 words in their vocabulary that they can say, that they can use to express themselves, so that when they're in kindergarten, they know how to say, I'm frustrated by this, or I'm angry by this, or I'm hungry, or I want to go to the bathroom. And so having the ability to have those words in their vocabulary is, to me, critical for their learning environment. The next thing we want to just touch on briefly is the return on investment. And there's a lot of work being done right now on where to put your dollars. Where is it important to put your money? And you can see from this is James Heckman. He's a Nobel laureate on economics that talks a lot about human capital. And where do you put the investment? And so really this is just a diagram that kind of shows you if you invest early, that rate of return is going to be significant. And at an earlier age, you have a $1 investment turns into a $7 rate of return as that child becomes an adult. So then one of the other things I think is important is when you talk about what do employers want? To me, it's important to prepare children for school, but to what end? And so we want them to be ready to become good employees. And in a lot of the conversations we're having really now, we see employers coming back and saying, I think the academic skills are absolutely needed, but what we're really missing are some of those soft skills. Children are struggling with perseverance. Children are struggling with problem solving. And so then they don't become good teammates. Then they don't become good employees when they have to work in an environment with other people that are adults. They might work well by themselves, might be academically on track, but they're struggling with that teamwork and the making decisions and the problem solving. So we really want to talk about that some of those fundamentals are really laid in early learning. So all that said, to say, how does Volusia County Schools fit in? So one of the things that I want to talk about is, again, we contract with every single voluntary pre-kindergarten provider that's in Volusia and Flagler. And we then do a lot of work comparing to what are other counties in the state doing, what are other areas in the state doing. And one of the things I wanted to point out to you is that in Volusia, we are, as a school board, you guys are actually serving below the average number of children that other school districts are serving across the state. The average you can see is it's up around 16.5%. Last year it was almost 19%. In our contiguous counties, Flagler, my other county that we work with, this year they're serving 35.5%. Last year they were 47% of the children were in a VPK. A couple of things that I love the way Volusia County does is in the classrooms that are using some of your Title I dollars, you specifically target the most needy of the needy. You don't just kind of throw it out there willy-nilly. You go looking for the right children to serve. Those children are typically not the ones that are being served elsewhere, typically not being served. You also make sure that you have degreed teachers in the classroom. To me, that's huge. Some of the best pieces of data that we can see are the educational level of the teacher is a direct correlation to the educational outcomes that you'll see of those children in their classrooms. The interaction that those children have with a professional shows once they get into the public school system and into kindergarten. So I wanted you to see that while you guys are funding and are using some of your resources to help with VPK, you do it very strategically, and you are below average within the state of Florida as far as the number of dollars that you're putting out there. So when you talk about what are some of the other counties doing, most other counties that I've talked to are working with some sort of blended models, and you do that here as well. The educational level of teacher really does vary greatly. Where you may see here, I'm so thankful that you choose to use degree teachers. Not every school teacher does that. Some school teachers use those that have a higher level of certificate for child care, or some of them use the same credentials that the child care programs use that are in the private sector. Some have VPK classrooms on every single campus. Where you do not, you have them strategically located in the needy areas. Some school districts choose to put that across all of their schools. And then some have birth to 5 programs leading into VPK, and some do not. You do not here. But some do have that birth to 5 preschool programs on an elementary school campus in order to then feed into that particular school. So I gave you a list of the school districts that I know. I talked with my counterparts, so I know what those school districts are doing because my counterpart is contracting with them as well. And then just wanted to give you a few pieces of just what Seminole County schools are doing, and they're close. I worked here for Volusia County Schools for several years, and while I worked for you, we always use Seminole as a comparison. They're very similar to us in size and in proximity, so it seemed areas. They have children that attend their home zone school. They do not have the same level of criteria that you do in choosing who goes to those programs. They are broader. They have a easier time getting in. They do use VPK funding from their Early Learning Coalition, and they use Title I funding to wrap around for those full-day programs. They have 10 classrooms at 5 schools serving over 200 children, and they've been doing that for This is their 4th or 5th year doing that. And so they're seeing some success. Their teacher ratio, their teacher-to-student ratio is 10-to-1. So they have 2 group sizes in their classrooms, have 20 children with 2 teachers. And they plan to continue the program. So some of the benefits in talking with their staff over there, some of the benefits that they see is it's giving their at-risk children one last chance to start to close that achievement gap. They feel like the best time to reach the children are when that core brain structure is being developed. So they like reaching into that age group. They think it's a great opportunity to provide continuity of care for a child. And I think you're going to see some conversations with some of the teachers in the classroom. And one of the things they'll talk about a little bit is transitioning. And children, you know, it's a high stress for children to transition from one thing to another. And if they're already on the big school campus and they're already seeing what a big school looks like, it's an easier transition for them into kindergarten. And so that's one of the benefits that Seminole's seeing. And they also think it helps educate the parents on the importance of early learning. So we see that we've continued to appreciate the work that they're doing. Briefly, just some of what the future is going to hold. A lot of discussion going on at the federal level. There's going to continue to be a focus at the federal level on early learning. It is here to stay. I'm very thankful about that, but it is here to stay. There is going to be an increased focus on the continuity of care concepts. It is good for children to be doing the same thing every day for several days. It is not good for children to be in this program today and this program tomorrow and another program the next day. And so one of the things I think the school board can bring. And you're going to continue to see the shift of education from a K-12 concept to the 3-year-old to K-12 and K-20. You're going to see that. And then you're going to see the birth to K-20 continuum. And there are already, the Center for Partnership over in Orlando is already talking about that continuum. They call it career, or cradle to career. So you're already starting to see that happen even in Florida in certain places. So I continue to just encourage you to find the value in VPK and continue to fund it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ms. Lebo. Now what we're going to do is I'm going to ask 2 people to come forward. R.T. Myers, who's currently the principal at Holly Hills School, former principal at Pearson Elementary School, where he worked with Ms. Henry, who is a VPK teacher. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chairman Wright, school board members, and Superintendent Russell. I'm glad to come to you today and to speak to you on this topic. I'm pretty passionate about it, and I think it's an exceptional program that we brought back into Volusia County after a number of years of it being absent. It was brought to me a couple years ago and presented to me and said, you got 2 weeks, can you get it off the ground? And I said, absolutely, we can. I went back to summer school and I said, Christy, how would you like this opportunity? And she said, fantastic, I'd love it, and ready to go. I said, who's your paraprofessional? And she turned around and she said, I want her. And we made it happen. And, you know, I think it gives the kids in Pearson, from that deficit in language and speaking only Spanish in the home, with no really Spanish vocabulary, not able to read vocabulary in Spanish, not reading in English either. So they were kind of in limbo there. So bringing them this opportunity to come back into the schools and giving them a level playing field as they start, it gives our kids, putting that money up front and giving our kids the opportunity to start on that level playing field, as opposed to 3 years down the line after they've fallen behind. Then we're putting money towards the intervention side of it as opposed to putting our money up front. And to me, that's just a common sense approach to where we put our money where it's going to make the biggest difference and give our kids an equal opportunity. The other piece to that is, I know Ms. Lebo spoke about it, is the highly skilled teachers that are in the classroom. I chose Ms. Henry because she does a fantastic job in the classroom. She has experience at kindergarten and first grade level, And I wanted the teacher, I chose her because she was a first grade teacher, that she had the skill to get the students reading, where I felt like kindergarten teachers at that level were just teaching kids at the beginning stages, but she knew the progression. And, you know, I think she was the ideal choice to be placed in that position, and I think she still remains there to this day and doing a fantastic job. And I'll speak a little bit about the Holly Hill side of it, because I get to see the other side of the county in the continuum as well. And I get to see students that come out of poverty with that limited word vocabulary coming into schools and not able to express themselves. And when they can't express themselves, they tend to act out to show with their hands how to accomplish these tasks, as opposed to using their vocabulary. So it's one thing I've tasked the pre-K teacher this year is, as Christy now collaborates with our local providers in the area, not just Volusia County teachers. These are private providers to bring their level of instruction up, their knowledge of how to teach key concepts, and making sure that they're up to speed in their instruction, because that's only going to make us better as a district when those private providers are in there. So at this point, I'll turn it over to Ms. Henry.
Good afternoon, Chairman Wright, school board members, and Superintendent Russell. My name is Christy Henry, and as Mr. Myers said, I've been teaching at Pearson Elementary for most of my career. And teaching at Pearson is very challenging sometimes, but also so rewarding when you see the progress those children make. Some of the challenges that myself and my colleagues make are serving our population of students who come from low socioeconomic backgrounds, but also students who have that language deficit because they're English language learners. So to me, the VPK program is invaluable because it allows us to prepare students to enter kindergarten with the social emotional skills they need, the cognitive or academic skills they need, but also give them a chance to get that content vocabulary. And times have changed with Common Core and the Florida standards. So actually your kindergarten students entering kindergarten, they need to possess many prerequisite skills. Kindergarten used to be where children came into kindergarten and could learn their letters and sounds. Those days are gone. Children need to enter kindergarten knowing at least 20 letters and their corresponding sounds. And if they don't know that, they're not placed in the SIPS program, which is a foundational program we've adopted that teaches phonological awareness, phonics, and sight words. So these students need to be provided intervention until they learn their letters and sounds, so they're entering kindergarten already with a gap and academically behind their peers. Immersing students at an early age in the VPK program with the English language and the 3 tiers of vocabulary being spoken in that classroom helps prepare these students for the rigorous environment they're going to see when they go into kindergarten. The Florida standards have adopted with their literacy where students, even at the kindergarten level, are having to examine a text. They're having to look at that text and interact with that text and make predictions about the text. And for our students, these texts are rigorous and they contain a lot of rich vocabulary. And so for the students that I teach, if they don't have that vocabulary, then they're at a disadvantage and comprehension doesn't take place. And then another thing that Ms. Lebo hinted on and Mr. Myers is that social emotional component. When we walk into our schools and in our classrooms today, these students need to be ready to learn starting on day 1. And if we're not teaching these social emotional skills and teaching the routines and what learning behaviors look like, learning cannot take place in that classroom until that happens. So we're preparing through VPK, the students are walking into those classrooms with the learning behaviors they need so that academic instruction can take place on day 1. Ms. Lebo also hinted around to the fact that our Volusia County schools, our programs with the VPK are unique because in each classroom there's a highly qualified teacher and a CDA, which is a Child Development Associate. So our ratio in our classroom is 10-to-1. And in my classroom, this allows me to differentiate all of my instruction. I differentiate through small group with my CDA, both literacy and in mathematics. So my students who have already mastered the readiness skills for VPK, we provide enrichment for them. I have students who are reading on a DRA 6. And then also, my students who are struggling with the standards for 4-year-olds, I am able to provide intervention for them. Mr. Myers also hinted around about collaboration, and yes, I do meet with the private providers in our area and even plan with them, because if we don't tell them the prerequisite skills that are needed for our children to enter kindergarten and be ready for that rigorous environment, who will? And then also, just providing them with that support, because, maybe they just have a CDA in their school. So if we can provide them with students. Finally, when I was asked to sit on this team, I decided, who better to tell me what VPK and how it has impacted their students in their classrooms than to go and meet with the teachers of the students that I have taught, over the past 2 years. So I sat down with the kindergarten teachers and the first grade teachers, and we looked at data. And then I asked them, I said, tell me what you think about the VPK program and the children that are entering your classroom. And these are some of the common themes that they said. They said students are entering the classroom with learning behaviors in place and the social emotional skills that they need for instruction to start on day 1. They said these students are serving as role models and peer coaches in their classrooms. They said students entering kindergarten from pre-K have superior readiness skills, or they have already been identified and supports and resources are in place to help support those students in their classroom. They are overwhelmingly supportive of the VPK program, and they value the impact it has on their students, their classroom, and their schools. Thank you. Oh, yes. This is a video of 2 years ago where I was teaching letters and sounds to a group of students, and you can see 3 of those students are second language learners, and the little boy in the middle with the Cookie Monster shirt on, he's completely NES.
It's your turn, Josie.
Non-English speaking.
Sit down on your bottom, Yvonne. What letter is that? E for Elizabeth. And what sound does E make, Josie? David, what sound does E make? Good job. Like eggs in Elizabeth. All right, I hope you don't get the skunk. Pick a letter. Josie, eyes are here. What letter is that? No, let me show you. Where's T? Who has T? This is T, buddy. And T says T. This is L, right. Yvonne's telling you the sound. L says, ooh, like you're licking your lemon lollipop. What is that letter? That's right. He knows all the sounds.
I see that.
This is W. Say W. W. And what sound does W make?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it. At the beginning, you saw the pictures. It's a picture that's used frequently, the differences between equal and fair, and I think it serves to point out some of this. Now, I would like to bring up Principal Carrie Servniak and Ms. Crick. If you'll come up. Ms. Servniak was principal at Orange City Elementary and is now serving over at Indian River Elementary, both VPK sites, and Ms. Crick is a kindergarten teacher at Westside Elementary.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Chairman Wright, school board members, Superintendent Russell. I'm super excited to be here with you today to talk about the VPK program, and I was able to open a new VPK unit when I was at Orange City Elementary. Many times as school years started and we had kindergartners coming off the bus before we started our program, some of those children would come off the bus and not be able to tell us their name, how they might be getting home in the afternoon. If you can imagine what those students walk into in a kindergarten classroom with the rigorous expectations when that's where we're starting, it starts for a long day for them. We work very closely with our families in the schools. At Title I schools especially, we build those relationships. And the great thing about bringing VPK into the school is that you already have those relationships with those families. They trust us. They're happy to bring their children to us, and they do so willingly in a situation where maybe they wouldn't have sent their children to VPK before. And I think that's imperative. When we first opened the unit at Orange City, it was really all I had to do was go to the bus loop, the parent pickup, and stand on the front steps for about a week at my school and just start talking to parents with kids in strollers and say what we were going to do, this is what we were going to offer, and that class filled up quicker than I could have ever imagined because they were excited to bring their kids to us. And that to me, as the principal in that building, that speaks volumes, that they felt comfortable in that way. In our Title I schools, our parents need to work. They have to work to survive. Many of the private providers provide wraparound services, but there's a fee that many of our parents just can't afford. So instead of sending the kids to those programs, what they do is they keep them home with a grandmother or an aunt or a neighbor, because who's going to leave work in the middle of the day to pick them up? Nobody can, and we offer them the full day services along with the rest of their children, and it provides that opportunity for them. The life skills that we teach them, as well as school structure, and I know we've hinted to talking about what's with them understanding that school structure will do. But, our VPK kids, they go to the cafeteria every day, which if you've ever been in an elementary school, the first week of school, and trying to get 100 kindergartners to understand which way the cafeteria line goes, what their lunch number is, all of those things, these kids in poverty, is even more difficult for them. They don't understand the food in the line, and they've had all of these experiences for a year with the support of a paraprofessional who eats lunch with them for an entire year, teaches them the setting of, sits down with them at lunch. Some of them don't sit at the dinner table at home. So sitting for 30 minutes during a lunch period can be extremely difficult, and they're afforded that opportunity that they wouldn't have before. One of the things that I love about VPK is these children attend our special area classes. They have certified art teachers, certified music teachers, certified PE instructors that they get to go see every day. They get to hear magical tales in our media center from our media specialists, and those are just opportunities that they would not otherwise be afforded. All of these experiences give them exposure to language and literature that children in poverty just don't otherwise experience. This year at Indian River, when we screened our children for that SIPS program at the beginning of the year, 46 of my children did not have the skills that they needed to start the program, and we had to remediate. In a class of just over 80, that's more than 50% of my kids that needed extra support. That to me speaks volumes as to where we had to begin. We would love to have more kids to have the opportunity to have VPK in our schools, because we know that we can impact their future, and these kids that we're going to serve for the next 12 years, 13 years, the impact that it can make. What I really wanted to close with today is I wanted to share a story of just one student, a student that you could really see it impacted their life. So I reached out to my teacher at Orange City, and she wrote me this story about Jabdeel and what happened to him at Orange City Elementary last year. Jabdeel entered VPK at Orange City Elementary as an English language learner with no English receptive or expressive language skills, and only his to internalize the classroom expectations, procedures, and routines that he needed in an early education classroom. Jabdeel also demonstrated progress in all VPK assessments throughout the year. Infant knowledge score of 1, phonological awareness score of 2, oral language 0, mathematics 1. In the second assessment, he showed growth However, at the third assessment of the scores that I want to tell you about, in AP3, which is given at the end of the year, his print knowledge was 6 of 12, which is just one below the expectation for where he needed to be. But he scored a 22 out of 23 in oral language and vocabulary, exceeding expectations. He scored 13 out of 18 in meeting expectation for mathematics in all areas except for the one point that child was ready to go for his kindergarten classroom. And then she quotes a quote from herself at the end, and she says, as a VPK teacher, I always keep a few anecdotals for a personal journal of experience as an education professional. In February, VPK had a Valentine party for students and for families who wanted to participate. In preparation for sharing, each child decorated their own box for Valentine's. Each child also placed their Valentines they brought for their friends in each other's boxes. As the party began, the children opened their boxes and explored the Valentines from their VPK friends. After exploring his box for a few minutes, Jabdil came over with an expression of complete joy on his face. And he said to me in English, Miss Kim, I love my We Love You box. And I thought to myself, he gets it. For a VPK student who struggled to communicate with adults and peers and who often did not comply early on with classroom rules, procedures, and expectations, his comment was an eloquent example of the progress of a student enrolled in VPK. Quality early childhood education closes the gap in kindergarten readiness for our most at-risk students. One moment each academic year makes all the difficult work in VPK worth the exceptional effort required. This one comment made my year. Thank you.
Okay. Hello, Superintendent and members. My name is Judy Crick, and I'm excited to be here today because I'm very passionate about the VPK program and how important it is in Volusia County schools. I have taught for 17 years consecutively in kindergarten. I've taught across the state of Florida. I've taught in affluent schools as well as low economic schools. I'm currently working at Westside Elementary School, which the student body is 95% free or reduced lunch, which makes us a Title I +1 school. We have many at-risk students at our school. We do have a full-day VPK program. I believe the VPK program is valuable, like I said, for all Volusia County program. Enter kindergarten with a with-itness. This with-itness includes social, emotional behaviors, and academic performance. The students are able to enter kindergarten with a confidence and ability to follow a daily schedule. This also includes transitions from special, like she mentioned on about the cafeteria, which is very true. All of these experiences are so important, and it's those behind the scene things that they learn that are really not taught but just learned in a social environment. They have acquired social skills needed to learn and work in a small community. They have the ability to use their listening and speaking skills that they learned in the VPK program. They're able to communicate orally their wants and needs. These students present self-regulating skills, self-help skills, and advocacy skills for themselves. They're able to raise their hand and tell me and other kindergarten teachers what is needed, which is so very important. So then that way we can start teaching the actual curriculum that begins after staggered start. In recent years, the expectation of kindergarten students has grown due to the shift of the Florida state standards. The rigor in today's kindergarten classrooms is much higher than previous years. I started teaching kindergarten in 1999 when there was nap time. There's no more nap time in all subject areas. The students have had the opportunity to complete the VPK program come in as learners. Students coming in with a solid foundation. It is extremely important for at-risk students who do not have these skills because they did not attend the VPK program or they don't have them taught at home. It is why I've stayed in early education my entire years, because I believe kindergarten and the VPK experience is the building blocks of education, and it is so, so very important, and I'm so passionate about it. Like I said, it's the reason why I've stayed in education, and I think that's why we're all here, is for the children. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you again. And now I'm going to invite Wendy Sadesky up. She is works for the district over all of our VPK programs. In an effort to make sure that we have time for questions, we're going to make this really brief. I don't want to cut anybody off. I don't want to cut off any learning here, but we're going to try to just give you a brief overview. 5 minutes, Wendy? Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon, Chairman Wright, school board members, and Superintendent Russell. You've heard some fabulous stories, but now I just want to talk to you about the first cohort, the data. In 2013-14 was the very first cohort that started with 45 students, and this was at the 3 schools, Pearson, Terry T. Small, and Westside. And the data that I'm getting ready to share with you is from the Florida VPK assessment tool. And what this is, it is aligned to the standards for 4-year-olds. And it encompasses 4 areas. It's print knowledge, letters, phonological awareness, sounds, math, and there's number sense, reasoning, oral language, and that's different expression, adverbs, nouns, verbs. What it is referred to, and I know that you've heard it previously, AP is the means assessment period. So 3 times a year, the teachers assess. They assess in September, January, and then again in April. And all of these are measured. These measures are aligned with the Florida Kindergarten Readiness Screener, which is otherwise known as Flickers, which takes place in kindergarten. This slide shows the growth from AP1 to AP3. Now, these are not test scores. These are percentages specific to the schools. And again, this is the growth. So if you look at the very first one, that's ELC. That is the district, that is ELC's average with Volusia and Flagler, the combined average. And then you'll see Terry T, Pearson, and Westside. Just for instance, to give you a little brief synopsis of this, Terry T's beginning AP score was 42%. They ended with 92%. So that slide right there just shows the growth from AP1 to AP3. Now, this cohort is moving on to kindergarten. This is 2014-2015 school year. This is the data from the kindergarten teachers in the cohort sites. They assessed the uppercase, lowercase sounds, letter sounds, and mathematics. If you look at the chart, these are the students, kindergarten students. The green section is students entering school. Okay, these are just students entering school, not targeted. They could have gone to VPK, we're not so sure. To students that completed the Volusia County Schools VPK program, which is orange, which you'll see is the highest area, to the students that completed the summer VPK in the Volusia County Schools. So you can see what happens from VPK to now to the students entering kindergarten. This next slide shows the students at the end of kindergarten, the same cohort. The 45 students that entered the first cohort in 2013-2014, now we have 39 students total that are still in the district for this year. 34 were promoted. They were promoted to first grade. 2 students went to first grade. They were administratively assigned, and 3 were retained out of that first 45 cohort of those 3 schools. So looking at it and comparing the data and looking at the growth, it is quite obvious. VPK prepares the students for the rigorous and demanding curriculum of kindergarten and for their future years. Thank you.
And I'm just going to close here before we get to your questions. We've been looking at what our own state legislature, as it has just ended, is done with all of their bills and everything. And we have not yet talked a lot about what federal action and the federal reauthorization of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act that was reauthorized in December, which is now called Every Student Succeeds Act. No longer will we be under No Child Left Behind, we'll be under ESSA, the Every Student Succeeds Act. And as referenced already by Ms. Lebo, this is one of the first times that this bill is looking at supporting early learning classrooms. You heard her reference the age 3 to grade 20, and that's going to continue, and we're going to look to hear and see more federal legislation as we move towards enacting that reauthorization. And then to close with this quote from Senator Patty Murray. And I just think, again, it talks about why is this important and what our response should be as those who are in charge. So everybody has stayed around. If you had questions from one particular portion of the presentation, we are certainly available to answer any of them for you now.
Go.
You mentioned, the first speaker mentioned 2 adults in the classroom in Seminole. Are those 2 instructional leaders? Forgive me for not knowing everybody's name. Are those 2 instructional positions, or?
They're very similar to what you do here in Volusia County.
So they're certified teachers?
One is a certified teacher and one is a CDA, or a certified child care worker may not have a CDA.
Okay. I have a question if we've considered VPK. I love VPK. My son went through it. I think it's amazing. But I paid for the wraparound as the parent. So have we considered doing a pure VPK in the morning and then having that CDA in the classroom and then flipping the certified teacher for the other half of the day with another classroom for 3 more hours to be more economical?
Do you want to respond to your thoughts? We have not yet considered that.
Well, I'm honestly, I had a 4-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that they can keep up for 9 hours a day or 8 hours a day.
Yeah, go ahead.
Most likely it's not a 9-hour instructional day. That's what you see, like the one slide that showed the summer
That's
programs.
A terrible program, and we proved last year that didn't work, or that was the statistics we gave for an 11-hour day.
Right.
I remember it very clearly because it's terrible. But what I'm thinking is year-round, there's still 4. Mm-hmm. And then I see 3 on the slide, then I see birth. I'm not stupid, and I didn't have VPK, and I did have naps for kindergarten. And I know there's different qualifications now, but I just don't, I hate the idea of pushing a 4-year-old so hard and so fast. Is it just another second kindergarten?
So let me tell you one of the best things